My name is Nadia, and for years I lived in a house where I was treated like a stranger. When my father remarried Nancy, everything changed. She lied, she manipulated, and she made sure my own father saw me as a burden instead of a daughter. She controlled the money, the decisions, the house, and she thought she could control me too. But what she didn't know was that I was watching. I was learning. And one day I was going to take everything back. This is the story of how my stepmother tried to destroy me, and how I made her entire world collapse without ever raising my voice. I was 10 years old the day my father remarried, but I remembered it like a bruise that never healed. The house smelled of new perfume, sweet, fake and heavy, nothing like my mother's soft lavender. Guests filled our living room, congratulating my father while I stood in a corner, clutching the hem of my dress. Everyone kept telling me I should smile for Daddy, but I already sensed something was wrong. Then she walked in. Nancy. Her eyes scanned the house like she was measuring what she could take. She gave me a smile, tight, sharp, rehearsed. It wasn't warm, it wasn't kind, it was a warning. This must be Nadia, she said, bending slightly. I hope you behave better than you look right now. I froze. I didn't understand her words, but I understood her tone. My father didn't hear her. He was too busy holding her hand like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. From that day the house shifted. My father laughed louder when Nancy was around. He listened to her voice more than mine. She walked in with nothing, no money, no status, no background anyone could verify, but somehow she gained control of everything. And my father let her. My grandmother was the only one who noticed the change. Keep your heart steady, my child, she told me. Some storms come disguised as blessings. But even she didn't know how quickly Nancy's storm would destroy our home. The night after the wedding, I overheard Nancy whispering to my father, her voice dripping like venom. She needs discipline, Arthur. If you want this marriage to work, you must let me handle her. My father didn't object, he didn't defend me. He just said, do whatever you think is best. That was the moment I realized. I had just been handed over. And Nancy was ready to begin. The very next morning, Nancy made her first move. I had barely rubbed sleep from my eyes when she barged into my room, flipping on the lights with unnecessary force. Get up, she snapped. Children who live under my roof don't sleep past 6. Her roof. My home. She had been here less than a day, and had already renamed everything. I moved quickly, not wanting to anger her, but it didn't matter. She inspected my room like a prison guard. My toys were messy. My books were disorganized. My bedsheet was tight enough. She found flaws in everything, even in the way I breathed. When my father came downstairs, Nancy rushed to him first. Arthur, look at her, just look, she complained loudly. Is this how a child should present herself? This is why she needs structure. My father sighed deeply, as if I were the burden, and nodded. Nadia, listen to your mother. She's not my mother, I whispered before I could stop myself. Nancy's eyes sharpened. My father's jaw tightened. And in that moment, I realized I had made a mistake I would pay for later. Breakfast was silent except for Nancy's complaints and Lucy's high-pitched toddler giggles. Lucy was 2 years younger than me, but Nancy treated her like delicate royalty. If Lucy spilled juice, it was an accident. If I dropped my spoon, it was carelessness. Revenge wasn't even in my vocabulary yet. Survival was. That night, Nancy entered my room again. She stood by my bed, her shadow stretching across my blanket. You will learn your place, she whispered. Children like you break easily. I held my breath, praying she would leave. And when she finally did, I stared at the ceiling, trembling, realizing one terrifying truth. She wasn't done. She was just warming up. As weeks passed, Nancy grew bolder, and my father grew smaller. He wasn't the man who carried me on his shoulders or read me bedtime stories anymore. He was a shadow standing beside her, agreeing with everything she said, even when it hurt me. One evening, I was doing homework at the dining table when Nancy snatched my pencil. What kind of handwriting is this? She mocked. Are you a child or a chicken? Lucy laughed. My father chuckled too until he noticed my stiff posture. But even then he said nothing. I looked at him, silently begging him to defend me. He looked away. Later that night, my grandmother visited. As soon as she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. She marched straight to my father. Arthur, what is happening in this house? She demanded. My father rubbed his forehead, exhausted. Mother, please stay out of it, you're making things worse. No, she said firmly, pointing at Nancy. She is making things worse. Nancy smirked. Maybe if Nadia behaved better. Enough, my grandmother's voice cut through the room. Nadia is a child, you are the adult, act like one. For the first time, Nancy's smile cracked. But my father didn't stand with his own mother. He didn't stand with me either. Mom, please leave, he said quietly. And she did, but not before squeezing my hands. You are not alone, she whispered. That night, Nancy came to my room, her eyes blazing. You think your grandmother can save you, she hissed. Watch how quickly she disappears. A chill ran down my spine. Because Nancy never made empty threats. And the next morning, something happened that proved it. Something that changed everything. My grandmother visited every weekend, until she didn't. One Saturday morning I waited by the front door, clinging to hope. She had promised to take me out for pastries. Noon passed, then evening, then Sunday, no call, no message, nothing. My heart pounded with dread. When I asked my father if he had heard from her, he waved me off. She's busy, Nadia, stop worrying. Busy? My grandmother. She called me even when she was sick. Nancy watched me from across the room, a satisfied smirk on her lips, as if she were enjoying my confusion, my panic. The following week was unbearable. I wrote letters to my grandmother that never got mailed. I asked my father to call her. He said he didn't have the time. I even tried calling her from the house phone, but it mysteriously stopped working whenever she was the number I dialed. Then one afternoon, I overheard Lucy whispering to Nancy in the kitchen. Is she gone forever? Nancy smiled, as long as she knows her place. My stomach twisted. What had Nancy done? That evening, I gathered the courage to ask directly. Nancy, did you say something to Grandma? Did you tell her not to come? She leaned down, her face inches from mine. I told her the truth, she said softly. That you were becoming difficult, that her visits were doing more harm than good. My throat tightened, but she wouldn't stop seeing me. Nancy's smile widened. Oh, she would, and she did. She walked away, leaving me shaking. My grandmother had been pushed out of my life, and my father let it happen. But that night, as I cried under my blanket, I made a silent promise to myself. If they wanted me powerless, they were going to regret underestimating me. Because something happened the next day. Something Nancy never expected. It happened at school. I was called to the principal's office during lunch. I walked in nervously, expecting the worst. What I didn't expect was to see my father sitting there, expression blank, hands folded tightly, alongside Nancy, who wore a mask of fake concern. The principal cleared his throat. Nadia, we received a report that you've been, he hesitated, glancing at Nancy, acting out at home. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. That's not true. Nancy gasped dramatically. Sweetheart, please don't lie. Lie. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The principal continued. Your parents believe your behavior may be disrupting the household. They think counseling might help. Counseling? For me. Not for the woman tormenting me. My father nodded slowly, avoiding my eyes. It's for your own good, Nadia. I stared at him, anger rising like fire in my chest. You're letting her do this to me, I whispered. You're letting her ruin everything. Nancy leaned forward. We are trying to help you. I snapped. You don't want to help me, you want to erase me. The room fell silent. The principal shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we should take a break. My father stood abruptly. Come, Nadia, we're leaving. But as we walked out of the office, I saw something that hit me harder than anything Nancy had ever done. My father looked embarrassed. Not for what he allowed, but for me. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Not anger. Not sadness. Resolve. I realized I wasn't going to be saved. I was going to save myself. And fate delivered the first opportunity that same week. An opportunity that would become the beginning of their greatest regret. School ended late that Thursday, and I trudged home past the familiar chain-link fences and suburban lawns, my mind racing. I was still seething from the principal's office incident. My father's silence had strung worse than Nancy's cruelty. But that day, something unusual happened, something that would change the rules of the game. When I opened the front door, the house was empty. Nancy was at some ladies' luncheon, and Lucy was asleep at a neighbour's. My father was out on one of his business trips. For the first time in years, the house felt mine. I wandered through the rooms I once called my own, feeling a spark of defiance ignite inside me. For the first time, I realized that power wasn't just about wealth. It was about timing, opportunity, and patience. Then I remembered the old box my grandmother had left me before she disappeared. A box filled with letters, photographs, and little things she had collected over the years. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were reminders of everything Nancy had tried to erase. Photos of my mother, letters she had written, and even receipts of investments my father had made in my name when I was too young to understand. That night, as I spread the papers across my bedroom floor, I made a decision. Nancy thought she controlled everything. She thought my father's silence meant she was untouchable. But she had left cracks in her armor, and I intended to exploit every single one. By the time I went to bed, I had a plan forming. It wasn't violent, it wasn't reckless, but it would be precise, calculated, and devastating. And the next morning, when Nancy walked into the kitchen expecting her usual obedience, she had no idea the storm was already brewing, quiet, unstoppable, and very personal. She had underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. The next morning, Nancy strutted around the kitchen like a queen. She tapped her manicured nails on the marble counter, barking orders while scrolling through her phone. I watched quietly, pretending to be the same obedient, timid girl she thought she had broken. But inside, I was studying her. Nancy loved appearances. Everything about her life, our house, her clothes, her perfect marriage, was curated for social approval. She wanted to live like the wealthy suburban moms she envied, but she didn't come from that life, and she was desperate to hide it. That desperation was a weakness. While she prepared her usual green smoothie, something interesting happened. She received a phone call, and unlike her normal loud, entitled voice, this time she whispered. "I told you not to contact me during the day," she hissed. "What do you mean the payment bounced? I said I'd send it next week." My ears perked up. "Payment bounced." I pretended to grab cereal from the pantry, but Nancy noticed me. She hung up fast and glared. "What are you staring at?" "Nothing," I murmured. But she didn't buy it. She stared too long, too hard, as if she sensed something in me had shifted. She was right. That conversation stayed in my head all day, and when she left the house that afternoon to run errands, I searched for evidence, not in her drawers but in the trash. Nancy discarded things carelessly when she was stressed. And there it was. A crumpled letter from a credit agency addressed to her, not my father. Her name printed boldly, the overdue amount circled in red. Nancy was in debt. Serious debt. She wasn't the rich, polished stepmother she pretended to be. She was holding on by threads. For the first time, I felt something sharp and satisfying curl in my chest. I had found her crack. Now I needed to widen it. In the days that followed, I watched Nancy unravel slowly, small things at first. Snapping at Lucy, forgetting appointments, nervously checking her phone. She tried to hide it, but stress clung to her like a shadow. And Lucy noticed everything. One afternoon, while I sat on the couch finishing homework, Lucy climbed beside me with her tablet. She wasn't mean like her mother, just spoiled and confused, trapped between the woman who raised her and the sister she'd been told to resent. "Mom's mad again," she whispered, swinging her legs. "She said she doesn't want Daddy to know." My heart beat a little faster. Know what? She shrugged. That she's broke. She told someone on the phone that Daddy can't find out or he'll leave her. I froze. Exactly what I needed, straight from Lucy's innocent mouth. Nancy had entered the marriage with nothing, and she was terrified of losing the little security it gave her. But what Lucy said next chilled me. She said, if you weren't here, everything would be easier. I stiffened. She said that. Lucy nodded. She says you cause problems. She says Daddy listens too much because he still feels guilty. Guilty. My father guilty. For the first time, I saw a new angle. Maybe Nancy wasn't the only one with something to hide. Lucy leaned close. Don't tell her I told you, she'll yell at me. I swallowed. I won't. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, Lucy peeked into my room with a timid look. Nadia, she whispered, you're not the bad one, she just doesn't like you. Before I could answer, Nancy's voice echoed down the hall. Lucy, get away from that door. Lucy ran. I sat on my bed, pulse racing. Lucy had given me more than information, she had confirmed something vital. Nancy's lies were spreading cracks not only in her image, but in her own family. And soon, something would force those cracks wide open. My father returned from his business trip 2 days later, tired but strangely preoccupied. He hugged Lucy, kissed Nancy, and gave me a stiff nod, as if affection toward me might shatter the fragile illusion Nancy kept around him. But his silence told me something. He was dealing with something bigger than he let on. That evening, while the adults sat in the living room, I quietly passed by to grab my backpack and I heard them. Nancy, Arthur, I told you we should consider sending her away. She's becoming a disruption. My father sighed heavily. Nancy, we can't just send her somewhere, she's my daughter. A daughter who resents you. She has reasons, he said quietly. I paused. He admitted it. He knew. Nancy scoffed. She needs discipline, structure, therapy, something. My father leaned back. Nadia is struggling because she feels alone. Losing her grandmother was hard. There it was, his guilt. The guilt Lucy had mentioned. Nancy leaned in sharply. Arthur, do I need to remind you who stepped up after your wife died? You think I don't deserve peace? I've held this home together. I deserve better than this constant stress. The tone, the manipulation, it was all too familiar. My father softened predictably. I know, I'm working on things. Working on what? Fixing the house. Fixing the marriage. Fixing me. I stepped back from the doorway and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about Nancy's cruelty. It was about the cracks in a marriage built on convenience and secrets. And if my father knew he had failed me, then I had one more weapon. His conscience. But I wasn't ready to use it yet, not until I had everything lined up. And something happened the next day that handed me exactly what I needed. A truth Nancy had been hiding for years. It happened by accident. Nancy had stormed out that afternoon to take a walk, but I knew it was to cool her nerves after another tense argument with my father. Lucy was upstairs napping. My father was in his office handling work calls. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked past Nancy's room and something caught my eye, her laptop open on the bed, screen still glowing. My chest tightened. I shouldn't go in. But the opportunity was too rare, too perfect. I stepped inside. Emails were pulled up, dozens of them, bank alerts, payment reminders, but one folder stood out. Private documents do not open. My pulse quickened. Nancy wasn't subtle, which made her predictable. With trembling fingers I clicked. And what I saw nearly stopped my breath. Documents, contracts, old addresses, tax forms. All from before she met my father. They told a different story from the one she flaunted. No wealthy upbringing, no stable family, no prestigious background. In fact, one document suggested she had changed her last name years before she married my father. But the file that made my stomach twist was labeled. Custody case closed. Custody. For Lucy. Or someone else. Before I could open it, I heard footsteps. Nancy. My hands moved instantly. I closed the folder, shut the laptop, and slipped out of the room seconds before she walked in. My heart hammered as I rushed down the hall. I had uncovered something huge. Something she had buried deep. But I needed to know more. The truth was there, hidden in that file. And once I saw it, Nancy's entire life would collapse. I just needed one more chance to open it. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed Nancy's file over and over. Custody case, old addresses, tax records. Something told me this wasn't just about Lucy. This was about power, control, and lies she had hidden for years. I stayed up, flashlight in hand, rifling through the box my grandmother had left me. Letters, photos, old checks, anything that could give me leverage. By 2 a.m. I had a plan forming. Nancy thought she was untouchable. She was. The next morning I noticed her packing the kitchen. Her energy was off, twitchy, like she had sensed someone watching. Maybe she did. Maybe she always would once I started making moves. I spoke softly as if nothing had changed. "Good morning, Nancy, did you sleep well?" She froze. "Yes, why?" "Just asking," I smiled, not a friendly smile, a knowing smile. She blinked, suspicious. I poured myself some cereal, every movement deliberate, controlled. Her phone vibrated. She snatched it up, her face tightening. I left the kitchen casually, my eyes on the staircase. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Patience mattered. Timing mattered more. And when the moment came, I would strike. That afternoon, Lucy approached me quietly in the living room. "Nadia, can I tell you something?" I leaned closer. "Of course." "She's planning something," Lucy whispered. "Mom said, if Dad keeps trusting you, she'll make sure you regret it." I held my breath. The child didn't understand the full weight of what she was saying, but she had confirmed something crucial. Nancy had a plan. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly, "but you don't need to worry, I've got this." Lucy's eyes widened. "You really do?" "Yes," I said firmly, "I promise." Later that night I sat at my desk plotting. Every detail mattered. Every weakness Nancy had, her debts, her lies, her arrogance, I catalogued. This wasn't revenge for the sake of anger, it was precision, every move counted. And the file I had glimpsed, that would be the first domino. The next day I waited until Nancy left the house for her weekly shopping. Then I accessed her laptop again. This time I carefully opened the custody documents. Inside were names, addresses, old court records. Nancy's carefully constructed story of wealth and security was built on deception. Everything she had used to manipulate my father, everything she flaunted to her friends, it was a lie. I copied the most critical files to a hidden drive. If my father ever doubted me, this would speak for itself. By evening I confronted her, not directly but subtly. "You seem distracted," I said. She froze, something in my tone, the calm confidence, unsettled her. "I'm fine," she replied sharply. I nodded. "Good. You should be." She didn't realize yet that the storm was already gathering. My father's guilt became my weapon. I dropped small hints about my grandmother's letters and my discoveries. Not enough for him to fully understand, just enough to make him uncomfortable. One evening he lingered in my room. "Nadia, I didn't realize how much Nancy had." I interrupted. "I know, Dad, I know everything." His eyes widened. The tension in his shoulders told me more than words could. He wanted to defend me, but fear of Nancy held him back. That fear would soon work in my favor. Finally, the first move of my revenge unfolded. I strategically shared a hint of Nancy's secret debt with Lucy, framing it as an accidental discovery. Lucy, curious and innocent, mentioned it to her mother in passing, watching closely how Nancy reacted. Nancy flinched, her perfect composure cracked. For the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. It was a small victory, but it was enough. The cracks in her armor were widening, and I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The house that had once been my prison was now a chessboard. And I was ready to play. It started small, Nancy forgetting appointments, misplacing bills, snapping at Lucy over trivial things. But I noticed every detail. Every mistake she made I catalogued mentally. One evening I accidentally left the hidden drive I had copied to on the dining table. My father saw it first. He glanced at the label, "Private Documents, Confidential." "What's this?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Just something I found," I said, letting my tone remain calm, neutral. He hesitated, curiosity flickering across his face. "I should leave it alone." I shrugged. "Your choice, Dad, but some truths are better faced sooner rather than later." That night, Nancy arrived home later than usual. She noticed my father's distracted expression. Her own irritation boiled over. "You've been staring at me all evening," she accused. "What did she give you?" "Nothing," I said, "nothing." But I watched her crumble just enough to see her fear. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know what my grandmother had prepared me for. And that uncertainty, it was already working in my favor. Lucy had become my secret ally. She didn't fully understand Nancy's manipulation, but she instinctively knew which side she could trust. One afternoon while Nancy napped, Lucy whispered, "Nadia, can we hide her bills in the drawer you told me about?" I smiled, "Yes, that's perfect." The thrill of watching Nancy unravel without her realizing who was behind it filled me with a controlled satisfaction. It was subtle, it was invisible, and it was just the beginning. Nancy thrived on appearances. Every social gathering, every PTA meeting, every dinner party was her stage. I realized I could manipulate her own obsession against her. A weekend party was coming up at the local country club. Nancy planned to showcase her perfect family to neighbors and friends. I decided to plant seeds of doubt among her social circle. A few carefully worded concerns whispered to the right people, enough to make Nancy sweat but not enough to trace back to me, would be my first public move. And when the night came, Nancy was already on edge. She laughed, smiled, and greeted everyone perfectly, but her anxiety betrayed her. I watched silently from the corner, enjoying every twitch and stammer. The first public crack in her image had begun. My father was caught in the middle. He wanted to defend me, but Nancy's subtle threats and manipulation had him paralyzed. One evening I sat with him privately. "Dad, do you realize what she's hiding?" He looked at me ashamed. I suspected something, but I didn't know how deep it went. "Then it's time to act," I said firmly. "You can't let her control everything." For the first time in years, he seemed awake, aware, and slightly terrified. He didn't realize that the first domino had already fallen, and the rest would follow quickly. The country club party was the stage. Nancy had no idea. I let small, carefully selected hints slip among guests, things only insiders could verify. Whispered truths about financial mishaps, subtle suggestions that her wealth wasn't entirely what she claimed, carefully placed documents accidentally in her view. By the end of the evening, Nancy's perfect image was crumbling in public. A friend questioned a financial inconsistency. Another noticed her unease. She left the party early, storming home, furious and humiliated. Lucy peeked from the hallway. "Did you see her face?" I smiled, "Yes, and it was beautiful." The first public domino had fallen. And Nancy had no idea who pushed it. Nancy's confidence was slipping. Each morning I could see it in the way she scanned the house, the way she nervously adjusted her clothes, and the tight grip she had on her phone. I had never seen her like this, vulnerable, fearful, exposed. One evening I overheard her muttering to Lucy, "I can't let him find out, he'll leave me." Her fear confirmed my plan. Nancy thrived on control, and control had just started to slip through her fingers. I made a silent note. Every weak moment, every secret she let slip would be leveraged against her. I started using social media to my advantage. Not to attack her directly, but to subtly drop hints that would raise questions among our community. Comments about responsibility, integrity, and honesty. Nancy noticed the whispers. One evening she stormed into my room. "Why are people asking about me? Why is everyone questioning things?" I shrugged, calm and innocent. "I don't know, maybe they just want the truth." Her eyes narrowed. That fear, the tight, clawing fear, was my reward. I didn't need to shout or accuse. My revenge worked quietly, invisibly, and it hurt more than any confrontation could. My father began noticing Nancy's cracks. Late one night he appeared in my room. "Nadia, I don't know what's happening. She's different, but I can't figure it out." I looked him in the eye. "Dad, she's hiding things that will hurt you if you don't pay attention." For the first time he looked frightened. He hadn't realized how deep the deception ran, and I knew that fear would soon work in my favor. Lucy had become a small but crucial part of my plan. She followed my instructions without fully understanding, reporting Nancy's slips of the tongue and inconsistencies. One afternoon, Lucy whispered, "Mom said something really bad today. She doesn't know I told you." I smiled. "Good, keep watching." The child's innocent honesty was my weapon. The more Nancy faltered in front of her, the more I learned. The more I learned, the closer I got to dismantling her carefully built life. It was subtle but devastating. I leaked a minor, verifiable financial discrepancy to a mutual friend of my father and Nancy. I didn't mention her directly, only let the truth float into the right ears. By the evening, Nancy received texts, whispers, and pointed questions. She couldn't understand why people were suddenly noticing. Her anxiety grew with every unanswered question. She called my father, desperate and trembling. "Arthur, why is everyone asking these things?" He said nothing. She turned on me, eyes wild. "You did this." I stayed calm. "I don't know what you mean." Her panic grew. For the first time, Nancy had lost control completely. And I smiled quietly, knowing the storm had only just begun. Nancy was unraveling faster than I expected. Every interaction she had with neighbors, friends, or even our extended family was laced with tension. I noticed her shaking hands when she poured wine at dinner, the way she avoided my gaze, and the way she double-checked every message on her phone. She finally came to me, visibly trembling. "Nadia, what are you doing? Tell me." I smiled faintly. "Nothing, I just want you to be honest." Her face paled. I didn't need to push further. The cracks were visible to everyone, but she didn't realize the mastermind behind them was sitting quietly at the table, smiling. My father finally began to see the truth clearly. One evening, he confronted Nancy privately. "Nancy, how long have you been hiding things from me?" Her face froze. She tried to maintain composure, but I could see the panic flicker in her eyes. Later that night, she stormed into my room. "This is your fault, you've turned him against me." I shook my head, calm, collected. "No, Nancy, I didn't turn him against you, you did that yourself." Her fear was intoxicating. She realized her control over him and over me was slipping irreversibly. The final piece fell into place during a local community event. I discreetly allowed small truths about Nancy's debts and past manipulation to surface through the right channels. By the time she stepped onto the stage to greet the crowd, whispers followed her. Eyes shifted. Questions arose. She tried to maintain her composure, but it was too late. Her carefully crafted facade shattered before dozens of people she wanted to impress. And through it all, my father looked at her differently, awakened, finally aware of the web of lies Nancy had spun around him. Back home, Nancy lashed out. "You did this," she screamed, pointing at me. I stood firm. "I didn't do anything you didn't already set in motion." Her panic grew as she realized her lies, secrets and manipulations were exposed to everyone who mattered. Even Lucy, once coddled and manipulated by her, now looked at her with cautious distrust. She tried to regain control, but it was too late. Every move I had planned, every secret I had uncovered, had led to this moment. I sat in the living room one evening, watching Nancy's anxiety manifest in small, constant tremors. My father approached me, his eyes filled with pride and relief. You've shown me the truth," he said quietly. "I can't believe I didn't see it before." I nodded. "You weren't supposed to, I handled it." Lucy appeared at my side, smiling innocently. "Did we win?" "Yes, we did," I whispered. Nancy was left to face the consequences of her own deceit and greed. The woman who had once ruled our house with fear was powerless, her public and private image shattered. And as I looked around the home that had been my prison, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Revenge had been served, justice had been restored, and I had reclaimed everything I had been denied without ever losing myself in anger or violence. The storm had passed, and I had emerged stronger. Nancy always believed she was untouchable. She thought her lies could hide forever, that my father would never see the truth, and that I would stay silent. But in the end, every secret she buried came back to bury her instead. I didn't need revenge through violence. I didn't need to scream or fight. All I needed was the truth. And once the truth came out, she lost everything she tried to steal. My peace, my father, and my life are mine again. And Nancy is left with the one thing she feared the most: the world finally seeing who she really was. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting someone destroy themselves.